Shalom and blessings. Today, let us reflect on the words of King Solomon regarding stable mental confidence versus false confidence. Every person by nature needs to feel secure. One must feel that they are relying on something, that they have something to lean on. And here King Solomon says the following words in Proverbs 10:22. He who trusts in his wealth will fall, but the righteous will flourish like a green leaf. King Solomon is describing a person who places his trust in money and wealth. King Solomon advises the person not to lean on that, because the moment wealth falls, the person will also collapse, since that is what they have relied on their whole life. In other words, a person might think that they will gain social status through money, or that their health will be secure through money, or that they will be happy through money. Their sense of security and happiness is based on wealth. King Solomon says, "No, this is a mistake. Do not lean on this." It is like a person who leans on a hollow cane. The cane appears to be very sturdy, but in reality, it is hollow inside. When the person leans on it, it breaks, and the person falls. It would have been better not to rely on it at all. King Solomon is teaching that relying on material things like wealth is like leaning on something that will ultimately collapse. The Vilna Gaon, in his commentary, explains this by bringing the teachings of the Talmud, comparing wealth to a wheel. A wheel is constantly turning, with times of prosperity and times of decline. Few people remain in a high financial position their entire lives. Life has ups and downs, challenges and setbacks, and people who were once wealthy may experience a downfall due to a failed business, a stock market crash, or some unexpected event. Therefore, King Solomon advises, do not rely on wealth for your sense of security. A person needs to feel secure, but that sense should not come from something so fragile. Furthermore, besides the risk of leaning on something that may fall, there is also the issue of divine assistance. If a person sends the message to God that they are fine without him, that they can rely on material things, then God may allow them to rely solely on those things. This lack of dependence on God distances them from divine guidance and protection. It is like a child telling his father, "I don't need you, I can manage on my own." If the child expresses that, the father might step back, while if the child says, "I need you, I can't manage without you," the father will do everything to help. Well, so you'll manage on your own. Also, from the perspective of the heavenly actions, Solomon says that the one who trusts in his wealth will fall. Rabbeinu Yonah, one of the great early authorities, said that this verse has another meaning. The trust in his wealth itself can cause his downfall. His confidence in the wealth will make him lose it. And this explains the words of King Solomon himself in the book of Ecclesiastes. Let's read the verse there. King Solomon says, "I have seen a sickening evil under the sun, wealth kept by its owner to his hurt." Under the sun, meaning on earth, in the entire book of Ecclesiastes. When we studied Ecclesiastes, we talked about the concept of above the sun, which relates to spiritual actions a person does, such as Torah, commandments, and good deeds. Below the sun, it refers more to the physical world. And Solomon says, "I have seen a sickening evil." This is what he calls it under the sun, a phenomenon in the world. And he was wise, he had experience. There is wealth kept by its owner to his hurt. Is it possible that wealth itself can harm a person? Would it have been better for him not to have this money? This can manifest in a person who uses the money for harmful actions. When a person has to work, struggle, and toil for his livelihood, he has time to think. But a person who has wealth flowing to him and isn't wise enough to use the time wisely, thank God I don't need to work, so let me learn Torah, or build a charity organization, or start a project helping people. If a person is wise, he knows how to use his money and time correctly. But if he's not wise, the wealth itself can harm him. The feeling that he has money and doesn't have to work and has plenty of time because the money just flows in can lead him to think about nonsense, like doing things that aren't good, smoking harmful substances, drinking harmful things, or going to bad places. As a result, his money destroys his life because it led him to a low point. The sages tell us that before the flood, the whole world functioned differently than today. Today, we're used to 4 seasons of the year, accustomed to certain temperatures, a time for plowing, and a time for harvest. People today live for a certain amount of time. A person reaching 70 or 80 years is considered normal. If someone reaches 100 or 110, it's very rare. The Torah tells us that before the flood, people lived up to 1,000 years. The Torah lists the 10 generations and their names from Adam to Noah, and the average lifespan was around 900 years. Originally, Adam was not supposed to die at all, and God warned him, "Do not eat from the tree of knowledge, for the day you eat from it, you will surely die." When you eat from the tree of knowledge, you bring the evil inclination into yourself. Before he ate from the tree of knowledge, the evil inclination had to be external, and the serpent would have come to lead him astray. After eating, it's as if he brought the evil inclination into himself and began to think bad thoughts. Therefore, after eating from the tree of knowledge, he and his wife were ashamed of their nakedness. Before, this did not bother them because there was no internal evil inclination burning inside them. But now, they suddenly realized there were unpleasant desires. And God says to him, "Do not defile yourself, because if you defile yourself from the tree of knowledge, I will have to return you to the dust and rebuild you when you are pure, when you are free from the filth of the evil inclination you have brought into yourself." When Adam ate from a tree of knowledge, in principle, God could have killed him. Immediately I told you, on the day you eat from it, you will die. But he showed him mercy. There is a verse that says, "For a day of the Lord is like 1,000 years. To God, 1,000 years is like a day." So when he told him, "On the day you eat from it," and saw that he was repenting, he told him that the decree could not be cancelled because it was for his own good. "After you became defiled, I need to return you to the dust and rebuild you in the resurrection of the dead. But I will give you my day, not your day, for up to 1,000 years. At what age did Adam live? 930 years. In the Holy Zohar, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, why 930? Because God showed him all the future generations, including the fallen souls, souls that were meant to come but fell, and saw a soul with a great light destined to be a fallen one, asking whose soul it was. He was told it was the soul of King David. Adam said, "I will give 70 years of my life to this soul." Thus, King David lived 70 years. Essentially, this is what the Zohar says. This is a donation from Adam, who gave 70 years of his life. He died at the age of 930. In any case, all those generations lived very long lives. The weather, say the sages, was like that between Passover and Shavuot. This period, which we call today spring, had the most pleasant weather, not too hot, not too cold. For 40 years the weather was like this. During the flood, the earth underwent a great disturbance. It is written that God took 2 stars from Kima, the Pleiades, causing tremors on earth with all the confusion of the flood. Then came the drifting of the continents. We expanded on this in the book, The Coming Revolution. After the flood, everything changed. So, in the past, people would work for 40 years. They would plow and sow once every 40 years, and they would have a harvest for 40 years. They could travel, eat, drink, and enjoy themselves. But people misused it. What did God do? He saw that all flesh had corrupted its way on earth. People were stealing because they were bored, and even taking other people's wives and doing foolish things. And God has a way. He says, "I give man an abundance of good. If you use it for good, I will continue to give it to you, like a father giving large amounts of pocket money to his son to enjoy. But if he sees that his son is using it for bad things, the father says, for your own good, I will stop giving. And that's what happened after the flood. He reduced everything for them. There are explicit verses in the Torah where God says that after the flood there will be seed time and harvest, cold and heat, day and night. He arranged the earth's tilt in a way that would create what we are used to today, shorter lifespans. Today, if a person reaches 120, it's unheard of. Why? He shortened it because he told them, I gave you long lives, and you could have used them for good, but you took them in a bad direction. So he shortened the lifespan, and when a person reaches the age of 40, 30 or 50, he says to himself, wait, that person passed away at 70, this one at 60, that one at 80. How much time do I have left? Not much. So he starts to think about his spiritual state. What am I doing right? This forces a person to have a soul-searching moment. But in those days, a person at 150 would say, I still need to go to kindergarten, I'm still a child. I have until 900, there's plenty of time until then. So they allowed themselves to do foolish things. This is an important principle. A person must remember that God gives a person good. If he takes it for good, God continues to give. If he takes it in bad directions, it can lead to harm. Therefore, Rabbeinu Yonah says here that a person who trusts in his wealth will fall, that wealth itself can cause a person to fall. Why? Because instead of being connected to the Creator, he is connected to money, materialism, and the affairs of this world. And King Solomon says elsewhere in Ecclesiastes, I have seen an evil disease under the sun, wealth that is kept for the owner's harm, that wealth itself harms him. There are people who worked for their money and know how to appreciate every penny. But children born into wealth don't know how to appreciate it. King Solomon, at the end of his life in Ecclesiastes, after achieving great success, talks about himself. He says, I had possessions, power, honor, and greatness, and I surpassed everyone who came before me in Jerusalem. He says, I outdid everyone. I had great power, I ruled the world, and everyone admired me. But there's a surprising verse there. And I hated all my labor in which I had labored under the sun. He looks back at all the material achievements he had under the sun in the physical world and says, I hated it all. Why hate it? He achieved great things. He continues and says the following words, which are a moral lesson for anyone striving for wealth and assets. Think about this sentence, says the wise man, both wise and from experience. He continues in the next verse, saying that we don't know what will happen to the person after us, and who knows whether the wise will be wise or foolish and will rule over all the labor. King Solomon says, after all the money I've earned, there is a limit to how much I can enjoy money. A simple question. A person who has $500 million and a person who has $500 billion. This is a huge difference in wealth, right? It's like comparing myself to him. The practical problem for a person with $500 million is that the person with $500 billion can enjoy the money more. There's a limit to how much you can enjoy. The one with $500 billion might say, I will sleep in 2 pajamas because I'm wealthier, so I need to feel it. After finishing a meal, he'll have another one, wear 4 watches because he's wealthier. There's a limit to how much you can enjoy money. Solomon says, after I achieved everything I achieved, I see where I've reached, and I said to myself, I will not enjoy this anymore. We don't know what will happen to the one who comes after us. My heirs will inherit it, and who knows whether the wise one will be wise or foolish and will control all labor. Who knows if I ruined my children's lives with the money I made, because the person who works for money knows how to appreciate it. He doesn't waste it. The child born into wealth can do a lot of foolish things with it. How many rich people know how to manage their money wisely? They leave behind a large inheritance, but their children's lives are completely ruined. Therefore, He says, there is wealth that is kept for the owner's harm. Once there was a case of a very wealthy man here in the country who asked me to speak to his 19-year-old son because he had tried to take his own life several times and didn't want to tell his father what was wrong. The father said, I'm at work. I don't know. I'll come home, and I don't know how I'll find him. I met with the young man and asked him what was wrong. He said, I'll tell you something I can't tell my father. He told me what kind of car he came in, one of the most luxurious cars. He said, all my friends have plans for the future. They have aspirations. They want to achieve something, but everything they dream of having in 30 or 40 years, I have today. I have nothing to live for. He grew up in enormous wealth. Everything he needed was provided instantly. I have nothing to live for. I have no ambitions. I don't even know what I'm doing here. If his father had known that his wealth would bring his son to such a state, he would have preferred to live in a simple apartment without all that wealth. Just give me a normal life. King Solomon says, goodness opens and peace comes with dry bread, but there is peace in a house full of light, yet it is desolate. Not always does a person's wealth bring him happiness. Sometimes the wealth that is kept for him brings harm. One needs to know how to manage oneself correctly, how to behave wisely. I told this young man, you should know that the feeling you're describing is exactly what Solomon said about himself. King Solomon said, I had this and that, and he described that he had no satisfaction. He even tried a little alcohol, what we call. Solomon says about himself, I said, maybe wine will do me good. I drank a little, but I saw that it's all vanity. A person drinks, feels in some kind of bubble, but it fades, and then he seeks more. Solomon says he searched for something that would bring him satisfaction, but he arrived at the verse, all the labor of man is for his mouth, and yet the soul is not filled. We have a body and a soul. When a person is hungry for food, who needs the food? The body or the soul? The body. But when a person feels unsatisfied, he's hungry for satisfaction. Who needs that? The body or the soul? The soul. Solomon says that the mistake we make is that we try to take material things and turn them into food for the soul, to bring satisfaction. All the labor a person puts into acquiring material goods, money, cars, a house, delicious food, all that labor goes to the body, but the soul will not be filled. I told the young man, you feel unsatisfied because you focus only on the material line, on the physical. Take what I'm telling you as advice from Solomon. Feed the soul, go to Torah classes, you have plenty of time. You don't need to work. Start a charity organization, do good deeds, involve people, do good things, and you will go to bed at night with satisfaction, feeling like you've done something. Because if everything revolves around materialism, it will definitely not fill you up. It won't bring you fulfillment. We see this in reality. When a person does commandments, good deeds, and learns Torah, even if he feels that inner conflict, should I go? Should I not go? Should I give? Should I not give? After he gives, after he does those good deeds, how much happiness, satisfaction, and joy does he feel? Because the soul has received its nourishment. We once mentioned an example to show how accurate Solomon's words are, because it may sound a little abstract. But let me take a simple example. A 25 to 30-year-old man coming back from work late at night, tired and wanting to sleep. The weather is stormy, rain, hail, and cold winds. While driving on an intercity road, he sees a car on the side of the road with flashing lights. He slows down to see what's going on, and he sees a woman sitting at the wheel, 4 children in the car, a flat tire, and she doesn't know what to do. He stops, approaches the window, calms her down and says, I'll take care of it. Under the rain and hail, he changes the tire and fixes everything. He finishes, says goodbye to her, and she thanks him before driving off. When he returns to his car, cold, wet, exhausted from the day, but as he starts the car and drives away, what feeling does he have? Happiness, satisfaction. If you told him, "Sell me that good feeling," he wouldn't be willing. No matter how much you offer him, he wouldn't sell it. Why? He suffered, but what made him feel so good? The soul receives nourishment from doing good deeds. This is what Solomon says. When a person seeks satisfaction from material things, it will not fill him. All the labor of man is for his mouth, yet the soul is not filled. Give the soul its satisfaction, its nourishment, its spiritual part, and you will see that it will be happy. And here he says, the one who trusts in his happiness will fall like a leaf that falls from a tree, but the righteous will blossom. The end of the verse refers to the opposite. The righteous will blossom like a leaf. What does it mean to blossom like a leaf? At the end of winter, you see a dry tree, it looks dead, but suddenly something green sprouts, growing and developing. How beautiful the leaves are. The tree fills with fresh, blossoming leaves. This is what he says, the righteous will blossom. At first you don't see it, you deal with difficulties. Everything looks dry. But if you walk the path of righteousness, you will see yourself flourish. Happiness can give a person status in society as long as he is rich. But when the money is gone, the status is gone too. People no longer treat them the same. Even today, people use the media to define someone by their wealth. This person is worth 100 million. They measure a person by money, but this is an insult. The person is much more than that, with a tremendous spiritual soul, capable of building spiritual worlds. To define someone's worth by their wealth is a disgrace. What is a righteous person? A righteous person is one who walks the path of justice, always examining himself and asking, what is God's will? If I am someone who gets angry easily, I need to work on my character to become more calm. If I tend to speak harshly and hurt people, I need to change that. He is respected because he respects others. A person who earns respect because of his position in the Knesset or because of a certain sum of money, all these material things, once they are gone, so is his respect. He is not truly respected. True respect comes from essence, not from external circumstances. A person who knows how to give respect to everyone. And our sages already said, do not belittle anyone, for you never know when you might need them. Sometimes you may be in a senior position, like a bank manager or a government official, and someone comes to you and you have no patience for them. You may answer disrespectfully, but the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says, do not belittle anyone, for you never know when you might need them. You cannot know the future, whether there will be a time when you will need them. Send your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. Just as you send bread on the water, and one day when you are hungry, you will find that bread. Water may seem like it's going to waste, but Solomon says, no, you need to think about this. There is no person without their moment. The sages tell a story about the destruction of the Holy Temple. After the destruction, there were Jews passing by the shore of Acre. A group of Jews saw the Romans who were now ruling the land of Israel. They saw a Roman ship rising on high waves as the storm tossed it from side to side, and afterwards the ship broke apart and sank. One of the survivors managed to hold on to a plank. They wore robes back then, but even the robe fell off his body, leaving him completely naked. He reached the shore and stood behind the rocks, embarrassed. He saw them passing by. They were Romans, but when he saw the Jews passing, he begged them, please give me clothes, give me something to eat. They were furious, since the Romans had slaughtered the people of Israel and burned the temple. They said to him, I wish the same thing that happened to you happens to all of your people, in their anger. Among them was a wise man. All the others were simple people. But among them was a rabbi, Rabbi Yossi, who was walking with them. He said, "It is written, in his mercy he does all his works." This man, though his people have sinned, is now in need and embarrassed. Wait a moment. He rose, took clothes from his bag, gave them to him to cover himself, and also gave him some money, telling him to have something to eat and a way to travel. They continued on their way. In time, the emperor in Rome changed, and he decreed harsh decrees against the people of Israel. A delegation of Jewish sages traveled south to appease him, bringing a box of jewelry as a gift to the Roman emperor. This was a common practice. You would bring gifts, like diamonds and jewelry, to the king. They were warned in advance that this emperor hated the Jewish people, and there was little hope, only a miracle. But they decided to try, so they traveled south and arrived before him. When the emperor looked at them, he said, "You should know, I would not have been willing to listen to you, but because of this man, Rabbi Yossi, who gave me clothes and money when I had nothing, I will save all of you. Take this gift, all the jewelry you brought, give him a gift. This is to repay him for what he did for me. There is no person without their moment. The sages say, do not belittle anyone, and this is true respect. One who respects others is truly respected. A person who knows how to give respect to everyone, he himself is honored. He walks the path of justice, the path of righteousness. Solomon says, and the righteous will blossom. When a person relies on the Holy One, blessed be he, not on his wealth or the United States, but knows that God arranged for a president who loves Israel, and arranged that this president surrounds himself with people who support Israel, even though the heart of the king is in the hands of God. It could easily change, but we thank God for arranging that we have a president who loves Israel. It's not just about loving Israel, but also about the whole system they tried to create there. The other side, their entire approach, is one that is against religion and family values. All the progressivism of that system, which has also penetrated here in certain circles, is destructive. When a person rises to greatness, someone who holds a conservative approach, we must thank God for giving us someone with a different perspective. Even there, the Americans have had enough of the madness that has been introduced to them, the progressivism that destroyed family values and corrupted the children. They want more values. The media creates an atmosphere that makes it seem like the people aren't like that. But in reality, the people on the whole cherish family values and tradition. This is the true people, both in Israel and abroad. This is what he says here. And the righteous shall flourish like a tree. That a person can flourish like a tree, even if at first they seem dry, they will blossom again. The Gaon of Vilna explains this verse, and the righteous shall flourish, teaching us another lesson. Sometimes you fall, and it seems internally that you've lost everything, that you failed in a grave sin. That's how a person feels, and this sin is like a stain that sticks to you. You don't forgive yourself, like a dry tree. That's when he says, know this, the righteous, even if they fall, they rise again, like a tree at the end of the winter. You see it dead, but out of that death, a leaf emerges and it grows. He brings the verse, the righteous may fall 7 times and rise again. Why is he called righteous if he falls so many times? 7 is not just 7. 7 is a number of abundance. We see in the Torah in several places that when it wants to say many times, it uses the number 7. 7 ways shall flee before you, and there are several such verses. 7 is a number of increase. So, in other words, the verse says the righteous falls many times, and yet he is called righteous. What kind of righteous person falls so many times? The answer is because he rises. The righteous may fall 7 times and rise again. If a person falls into sin or error and accepts it, saying, this is who I am, I am in this low place and I will stay here for the rest of my life, that is certainly not the righteous person. But if a person falls and says, I will not accept this state, let me examine how I build myself, what was my mistake, what was I happy about when I went there thinking I wouldn't fall, and then I fell into sin, he will not go there again. He will cut off ties with this bad friend who fills his mind with nonsense, takes him to bad places, and gives him unhealthy things. He will leave them, so even if he fell, he is called righteous at the time of his fall. Why? Because he rises again. This is like the tree, which at the end of winter appears to be dead. If someone doesn't know that it will eventually flourish, they might bring an axe and saw its trunk, saying the tree is dead, but inside there is life, and when the life breaks through, it will flourish. And the righteous shall flourish like a tree. You will see it rise, flourish, and reach greatness. Therefore, a person's reliance and confidence must not be in things that are not serious, not stable, or subject to change. True confidence is when a person trusts the right path they are walking on, and their reliance is on the Holy One, blessed be He, knowing that they are walking the right path. Sometimes the environment is not exactly pleased. There are situations where society mocks a person who begins to change their path to a better one, sometimes even family, but He knows, and you who cling to Hashem, your God, are alive today. On the other hand, it is written, do not put your trust in princes, in a man who cannot save. Even a person who seems great, his spirit will return to the earth on the day of his death. Do not trust in people. You rely on various matters, but know that our trust and reliance is on the Holy One, blessed be He, and that is a stable reliance that will never fail. It is the true support a person can rely on, until here. The parable of this verse is completely true, like every parable in the book of Proverbs. The parable is correct, and the interpretation is even deeper and more profound. What do these words mean? He who trusts in his wealth will fall in the parable. You are talking about money, about wealth, and this is completely true. But in the interpretation, King Solomon says that even if you have great knowledge of the Torah, even if you have spiritual wealth, you've studied a lot of wisdom. You know a lot, you've made great progress. But if you trust in that, and do not engage in learning ethics, listening to ethical lessons, reading books, suddenly you will find that you are falling. Your knowledge is vast, but you need to constantly fill yourself, not neglect ethics. Solomon says, hold fast to ethics, for it is your life. There is a difference in Hebrew between to hold and to grip. To hold is to grasp firmly. The word to grip comes from strength. A person who falls from a mountain and suddenly grabs onto a protruding branch or board and holds on is not just holding firmly, he is holding on with all his might so that he doesn't fall. Solomon says, hold fast to ethics, meaning there are books of ethics that teach how to correct character traits, how to overcome desires, how to control yourself, not to have jealousy or a desire for honor. Hold fast to ethics. Do not let go. What does do not let go mean? It means do not say, okay, I'll skip a day of ethics, because ethics is your life. Like a treasure you keep close to you, ethics is your life. You should know this. And indeed we see that when a person always listens to Torah lessons, speaks of ethics, studies, and grows in wisdom, we see that he has the strength to stand up to challenges. But without this, suddenly, even if he was at a high level, he may fall. Therefore, he continues and says that the righteous are like water, and the righteous shall flourish like a leaf. Why did he choose the example of a leaf in the interpretation? Because the leaf must constantly receive nourishment from the tree. If the leaf dries out, it dies. It must constantly receive fluids. It must constantly be alive. Likewise, the righteous person must constantly receive life, receiving teachings by listening to words of ethics, learning and growing in wisdom. These are things that experience proves. A person who constantly engages in Torah, ethics, self-control, self-education, although life is not easy, with many challenges and situations that cause anger. When there is ethics, it always serves as a balance, and Torah lessons help realign a person on the right path. A person who has trust in Hashem also benefits by not being dependent on the opinions of others. Some people go on diets that ruin their lives. Why do they want to look good? So no one will say anything or think something. There are people who undergo various surgeries, changing their entire bodies through operations. Why? To please others. This is a mistake. Sometimes there is a form of unattractiveness that a person truly feels they must fix, but some people do it just to fit in. Why? The measure should be, am I desirable in the eyes of God? When a person places their trust in God and relies on Him, they don't feel dependent on people. There are people whose financial situation is not good, but they must wear brand names. Why? To show that they can buy something at a certain price. They buy something 10 times more expensive. Why? Because they need the crocodile that opens its mouth or the cat with a tail. Why? To show that they bought that brand. It's all about losing yourself for the sake of others. Why be enslaved? If it's quality that you need, you will pay for quality. But if you don't need it just to impress people, why be dependent? The more a person develops reliance on God, the less dependent they are on people. Their life reaches a higher level of quality. This is what King Solomon teaches us here, to balance ourselves and enter a life path of stable and true confidence. When a person walks in the way of truth, acts according to the truth, and relies on the Creator of the world, and not on fleeting things or people, such a person lives a good life. They also have more divine assistance when God sees that this person is connected to Him. Walking the right path, He helps them in many areas. Even if they don't deserve it, He gives them extra favor. And let's end with a blessing that this lesson should be for the success of the people of Israel and the soldiers of Israel, wherever they are, that God should watch over everyone here with us, the viewers, wherever they are, and grant them long life and years of life. Amen.